Welcome to this episode on data visualization, part of a series of short films supporting courses I teach in data science and artificial intelligence. You can find more by following me on LinkedIn or as @Binocularity on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Welcome back. This is a section on numerical data. So we've talked about categorical data. Now we're going to look at how numerical data can be plotted and analyzed using PowerBI. So topics we're going to cover in this session include how to access the PowerBI user interface in linking and unlinking items on the dashboard. So you've seen how things can interact with each other. We'll show you how to disengage that if you don't want it to happen. How to do drill down into more detail with the data, and some of the analytics options. So PowerBI provides some ability to do essentially regression plotting, but it's not a full statistical package, so it doesn't report everything you'd want, but still it can help do some types of forecasting. And you can of course plug it into R or Python, so you can pull back actual data and data values from those tools too. In terms of plotting, we're going to look at numerical data visualizations, both histograms and line charts and trend lines. So histograms are essentially the numerical equivalent of a bar chart, where we're seeing a plot of an independent variable along one axis and a dependent variable along the other. And a histogram is often a count of some kind, or frequency. So histograms like this are a very common way to understand data. Let you look at usually distribution of frequency by count of items per category. And these categories here are usually intervals, time intervals or number intervals, where a count has been done across that interval. And unlike bar charts, they're numerical, although they look and behave in very similar ways. The data set we're going to look at in this series of examples is from Department for Transport data on new vehicle registration. So that's every new car or lorry or bus is registered, it's given its number plate, and it's registered on a date, and that date occurs at different times of the year. In the UK, it's important to know there are two key points at which these registrations are released every 6 months, and these will tend to generate peaks of registrations around that point in time, so that people get their new license plate at the very start of a registration cycle. Okay, here is the PowerBI interface. Again, we need to get data, and again, it's a spreadsheet. You want to be working in the folder 08_VTT, and it should be labeled something like numerical data. And inside there, there's a folder with DFT data in it, and there is the spreadsheet itself. Okay, so it's worth saying there's a number of sheets in here. One is the raw data sheet, and one is a wrangled data sheet. The wrangled data sheet is important to use this time because there's header information in the raw data that we wouldn't use, and which will actually require us to do filtering work. So we've pre-filtered this for you. So I just want to load the data. Okay, so that spreadsheet's loaded. You'll see there's a number of data sets. We can have a quick look in the spreadsheet view at what the data is. And you'll see that it's a time period, followed by a number of cars, motorcycles, light goods vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, and so on, registered in that time period. So this is reported monthly from 2001 right through to 2017. You can actually download this data live if you want to from the DFT. You just have to do a little bit of wrangling with the data first to get it into a form you can pull in easily to PowerBI. We will then go back to our view. Now we're just going to generate a plot of vehicle counts versus time, and we'll use a vertical clustered column chart to do that. It'll in effect be a histogram, and we want to use the field period for axis, so that is the date in which something's happened, and we'll look for, we'll use cars as the dependent variable. This is aggregating by default per year. Then you'll see there's a peak in about 2002, and then a dip down to 2011, and then a rise again to 2016. You'll see we don't have full data on 2017, so there's only a little blip there. And you could filter that out. We might well do that later and just count a whole year's worth of data. We have only January and February. What happens if you want to see more detail in the data? One way to do this is to change the page to only use certain dates. So what we're going to do is switch here to use period. So you'll see we can use period or date hierarchy. Date hierarchy will account for years, quarters, months, days, whereas period will just report the raw values in the data, and in this case they're every month. And you'll see here we've got all the data in every month from 2001 onwards. I'm just going to filter this to use dates after 2009, and we can see a little bit better what's going on. So we're going to filter on period. We're going to do filter on a visual. So we've already got period up there as one of the two fields in the visual here. We're going to click on, you could click a specific group of months, but instead of doing that, if you click advanced filtering, and we're going to say anything after the 31st of the 12th, 2009. And if we click apply, that's now sliced this out. So we've got everything from 2010 up to the very latest data in the first 2 months of 2017. Now, we're just going to make this a little bit smaller, just to illustrate a different thing. So what I'm going to do now is copy and paste this. Control C, Control V. That creates two versions of this. And that has the benefit that it keeps all the formatting and all the filtering that I've done to that plot so far. And I'm going to turn this into a line graph. There's the line graph. And if we go to this magnifying glass here, this is the analytics tab for visuals. And it allows you to add some analytics. If you're a statistician, it won't be a great set of analytics, but if you want just some basic introductory statistics, then it'll help. So one of the things you can do is add a trend line, and we'll do that. And you'll see it's added a trend line in there, and I think we can leave that at its default values. And you'll see the trend over time from 2010 onwards up to 2017 is for the number of new cars registered to gradually go upwards. So the other things we can do with this are to do more of a dashboard with this data set. Let's scrunch this up a little bit. We'll add a slicer to the data, and we're going to do that slicer using the time period. So if we drop that on here, and you'll see instead of tick box selection, we can now select any time in the whole time period as the region of interest. And one thing that might be useful to do is if we remove these filters, we can clear the filter on time on here, and we can clear the filter on time on here, the little rubber symbol in the filter pane. Then this slicer will let us do what we just did using the filter. So we can go right the way up to January 2010. And you can also cut off at the top end so that we remove the 2 months in 2017 that were on the end of the data. So that's another way to filter data and interactively, in this case, apply the filter to the whole page. Now, I just want to show you one other thing with trend lines, which is why they might not be always helpful, and why you need to look at the underlying data. Those of you who are statisticians will know a lot of this already. So I'll copy and paste this again. And if you remember, we set the date hierarchy to be reporting period. We'll set it back to date hierarchy, and this will summarize this data by year. And you will see by year we get the same effect, and we'll add on to this also trend line. We'll just use the default again. And you'll see in that time period over the years, certain things have, the trend is up again. Okay, so supposing we don't want this visual to be affected by the interactions of the slicer. If we click on the visual, you'll see a tab comes up called Format. If you click on Format and click on Edit Interactions, this will allow us to see how any one visual is influencing other visuals. If you click then on the slicer, you'll see it is filtering these visuals and filtering this visual here. If we click None on there, then because this is highlighted, we're switching off the interaction from the slicer to this histogram, and by switching it off, we then see the whole data set. So the slicer will have no effect on this anymore. You'll also see it's replaced this, so we might actually want to now filter this by period in its own way. And just say is less than 2017. Click apply the filter, and there we go. We now only go up to 2016. So this filter is for this visual only, and the slicer now only affects these visuals. So we did two things there. One, we used Edit Interactions on the Format tab. We can switch that off, so we don't see the interactions now, and anything we do to this slicer will affect these, but not that one. The other thing this does is it shows you that the trend in recent years has been for car sales to go upwards, but over time, if you start in 2000, the trend in car sales has been to go down. And those aggregation differences and time period differences are something you'll come across all the time in statistics, and you'll constantly have to be aware that different aggregations will hide different patterns in the data, or different slices of the data will hide different patterns in the data. So now I just want to talk a little bit about drilling down into data. So in this data set, we switched on axes and reported the period by date hierarchy. This allows us to drill down into the date hierarchy. And these different little tabs here do that in different ways. So I can turn on drill down, I can go to the next level down in the hierarchy, and I can expand out one level down in the hierarchy. And when we go to the next level in the hierarchy, so we're currently at years, the date hierarchy next is going to be quarters. And what you will see is that it doesn't summarize quarters by year, but it summarizes how each quarter in the year is varying over the whole of time in this display. So we're seeing the total number of cars in the Q1 across all 17 years that were in the visualization. If we go down again, you're seeing months aggregated again across all time. And here you can see that thing I was mentioning earlier, that there are 2 times of the year when new registrations appear in the UK, and most cars are registered just after those points. So one of those here is in March, and the second one later in the year in September. And that's the 2 high points in the current registration system for new cars to be registered. Okay, so we've seen drill down through the hierarchy of time units. If we use the expand out feature, this will expand out the whole range of dates into all the quarters. So rather than aggregating the quarters together, you'll see them all. This produces a plot which is just too big for us to view on here, but I'll try and scroll across so you can see it all right up to 2016. And if we go down one more level, we'll see all of the months, which is a lot of data. But there you go, all of the months from 2016. Okay, let's go back up to the top level. You can turn on drill down, which lets you interact with this through the visual. I won't do that now. I'll let you explore that in your own time, but it's a similar function, but has different side effects. Okay, one thing we can do, because we've switched off interactions from the slicer to this visual, but we've left other interactions on. So if I click on 2000 in this plot, you'll see it's not in the other two plots, so it doesn't come up. But if I click on 2010, it highlights that data, and this has slightly different effects depending on the plot it's influencing. So you'll see by highlighting 2010 here, I get the data in here per month in 2010 and the rest of the data, whereas in the line chart, its default behavior is just to slice out 2010 and show you the line chart for that year. See a similar thing if we go to 2016. If you click off there, if you click back on the same bar, it will reset the filtering that it's doing. And remember, if you want to see what any visual is doing to other visuals in terms of influencing it, click on Edit Interactions and you will see here that the overview chart we've got is filtering this one. Okay, so that's the end of the first section on numerical data. You've seen how to plot numerical data, how to control time hierarchies in numerical data sets, and how Power BI has two different representations of time, and the drill down feature, and both in its drill down levels and its expand out levels, two different ways of drilling down through a visual.